Welcome back, friends. Joe and I are going to fill a basket with all kinds of things that we need from our pantry and our freezer for meals that we're going to cook this week. We have lots of plans. Whether we'll get to them all is another thing, but we do need to go through a lot of the stuff that's in here. You can see these onions, they're about a year old. So we want to get those out, use some of those. We've got some soups, we've got some meats, we've got all kinds of things planned for this week. I hope you follow along. We are in week 3 of the pantry challenge and everything is going great. We have lots of things planned on our menu and we have lots of other things as well. I have bread that I need to make. We've got bone broth we need to do. We've got meat that needs canning. There's lots of stuff going on. And today's a great day to do those things because we have a winter storm going on outside, getting quite a bit of snow. They're calling for 8 to 10 inches. Not sure if we're going to get all of that or not. We'll see. But the fire is nice and warm on the inside, so come join us. We have some beef bone broth going. We have beef bones and vegetable scraps and seasonings, and it's going to be delicious. Joe also roasted some soup bones with some garlic and onions, and he's going to get those cut up and prepared to make a beef stew. We've got lots of things from our garden that we've had in our pantry, some thyme, rosemary, green beans, we've got some tomatoes, we've got all kinds of wonderful stuff. Barley, look at this. This is a nice thick stew, and what we do not eat on this night, we are actually going to freeze dry for later on. We got so busy on this next night that we almost forgot to eat. So I whipped up some honey mustard dressing really quick. Joe threw in some chicken fingers and fries into the oven, and that is what we ate. Sometimes you just need quick and easy, and that's okay. Today is a new day, and to start it out, we're going to have breakfast sandwiches. Homemade English muffins, farm fresh egg, and sausage. And it was delicious. Bread is something that I make on a weekly basis. I've been doing it for many years, and today I am making a brown bread. Now, there is no real recipe to this because I just kind of threw it together. I added a little bit of sourdough, I added some molasses, some honey, some salt, some yeast, a little bit of butter, and flour. The amount of molasses that I added to the bread was very little. It was maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup. It's going to be a light brown bread. I love making our own bread because I know what goes in it. And I mean, you just can't beat a slice of homemade bread. You just can't. When you're looking to simplify your life or just pare down from things or, not going to the grocery store as much or whatever it is, maybe you want to delve deeper into, baking from scratch or, try to learn something new. Homemade bread is one of those things that it's a great place to start. I first learned how to make bread from my mother-in-law. She taught me many, many years ago. I was very young and I was hooked. I was hooked ever since because there is just nothing like it. It's meditative and it's just so satisfying spiritually and emotionally and physically, and it feeds your soul, really it does. And the bread is ready. Can you smell it? Oh my gosh, it's heavenly. I always like to butter the tops of my bread. It softens it. My mother-in-law taught me to do this. Is that something that you do? I'm curious. Once I get my bread all buttered up, I'm going to sit and relax a little bit with a hot cup of tea and an old cookbook. This cookbook is from 1946. I love old cookbooks. I love just looking at all the things that they had recipes for, things that you just can't find today, and sauces and salads, and there was a lot of from scratch cooking going on back then. When I said this week was a busy week, I was not kidding. Joe is cutting up a beef roast to can. He's just cutting it in like stew beef. We've had a couple, 2 or 3 of these in the freezer. We have used one, and it was quite a tough piece of meat. So rather than try that again, we've decided to can it, and that will tenderize the meat quite a bit. I'm also taking care of the broth that's been on our stove for 2 or 3 days. It's beef broth. I'm removing the bones, and I'm going to just screen out a lot of the vegetables and things that were in there. I'm just putting these into a bowl because I'm going to put them through another time. I always use the beef bones twice. The stew beef is going to be semi-cooked. It's not going to be fully cooked, but we always semi-cook it because we add a lot of seasoning to it before we put it in the jar to can. We have 2 different pans going. One is a smokehouse maple seasoning, and the other has an applewood rub type seasoning. One with onions and one without. If you've never canned meat or bone broth before, it does need to be pressure canned. The only things that you water bath can are acidic foods, like your jams and your jellies, your different fruits, and tomato-based foods as well. These are both canned at 10 pounds pressure, and you can see they don't look the greatest in the jar, but they do taste great. Now, once everything was pulled out, this is 2 batches of broth. This is all of the beef that we canned. It looks great. And I always love looking at the jars after I pull them out. You can see they're still bubbling, and they'll do that for a little while. Just let everything sit before you put it on your pantry shelf. And it's time for another dinner. So on this night, we had tuna noodle casserole. Our son and daughter-in-law come over every Tuesday for Bible study, and he requested tuna noodle casserole. Of course, he sent me his recipe because he wanted it done the way he wanted it done. I didn't have egg noodles. We could have made them, I suppose, but there is only so much time in the day. So we compromised and used whatever we had in our pantry because it is a pantry challenge. We are not shopping outside of what we have. So what we did was we cooked the noodles, we added those in with the other ingredients, put them in a greased baking dish, and we sprinkled chips. They're just plain potato chips over the top. We were going to do dried onions, but Joe decided to do the potato chips, and that is how our son really wanted them. So while that is cooking, we have a bag of pork chops. Joe is adding some smoky peach whiskey sauce to it, and we're just going to let those marinate. Now, this sauce is the same sauce that we use when we do our canned chicken. I think if you go back a video, I had mentioned we canned chicken with smoky peach whiskey sauce. That is a tongue twister. This is the same sauce that we used. We're just going to let those sit in the refrigerator overnight. Now, dinner is ready. And as you can see, we have already dived in. It was delicious. Another dinner done. Now, let's move on to the next day. Who likes granola? I love granola. I think it's because I like anything that is crunchy. Granola is so good, and it's best if you make it homemade. Now in my cabinet, I have some pecans, some almonds. I pulled out some craisins. I am very loosely following the Pioneer Woman's recipe for granola bars, so you can look that up. And I say loosely because I just put my own add-ins in there. And I don't know, I don't measure. I just put in what I feel like having. And I do beforehand roast my oats with some salt and a little bit of coconut oil. I mix that all together, put it in the oven, and just let it roast for about 15 minutes. Then I'm going to add it all in a bowl. I'm going to put all my add-ins in there. Her recipe also called for some Rice Krispie cereal. I did not have that, so I just grabbed some Cocoa Krispie cereal. That'll work. In a pot on the stove, I have some brown sugar, some molasses, some of our homemade cran apple juice, and some maple syrup. I'm just going to mix that all in. I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla to it as well, and just going to cook it down until the sugar's all dissolved. Then I'm going to add it to this mixture. Just want to mix it all in nicely, and I'm going to lay it all on a lined baking sheet because it will stick if you don't line it. If you do use foil to line it, then make sure you grease the foil. If you don't have anything to line it, make sure you grease the pan. I let this bake for about 20 minutes, 22 minutes, and once it comes out, I let it completely cool. Completely. I just set it and forget it. Once it's completely cooled, then I'll add my craisins and my coconut. I don't add my craisins before because they will get hard in the baking process. Dinner on this night is chop suey. Now I'm not going to go into detail with this because I do already have this on my channel, and I don't have an exact recipe. This is a dish that my husband just knows and he makes, and he doesn't think about it. He just seasons it very well. On this night, I will tell you that we are using venison and we are also using moose sausage. So that is a little bit of a twist. It's some meat that we had in our freezer. We need to use it, and this is a pantry challenge, so this is how we're using it. We toasted up some homemade bread with this and put a little garlic seasoning on that, and that is what we had on this night for dinner. And I love one dish meals. We do a lot of one dish meals, and they're easy to do. They're easy to clean up after. And the rest of this chop suey, what we don't eat on this night, is going to go into the freeze dryer and be put away for a later date. The granola is nicely cooled, so I'm putting it into a gallon jar. You can see some of it is coming out in crumbles, some of it's coming out in like whole chunks. This is actually enough granola to do 2 separate sheets, and usually I do, but I was using the other cookie sheet for something else, so I just put everything all on one sheet. It's really too thick of a layer to be able to get a lot of chunks, so I'm getting a lot of crumbles in here, and that's okay. I don't mind. The kids usually eat this with a spoon out of a bowl anyway, so it works. This is a delicious, delicious breakfast. It's delicious over yogurt or over ice cream. It's a really good dessert or snack. Before retiring for the night, we are going to do a little dinner prep for the next night. My husband has a ham bone on simmering, and he's going to add some carrots and potatoes and onions. He's making a pea soup. Now this tastes best when you let it simmer for quite a while beforehand. So we have the cook stove going anyway all night long. It's how we heat our home. So he's going to have this sitting on it all night long and just simmering and gathering up lots of flavor for tomorrow's meal. Whenever we have a ham for dinner, we always save a little bit of the meat and the ham bone. We put it into the freezer and just save it for things like this. Waste not, want not. I also save all the drippings to the ham as well. Put all of it in there. And if there's pineapple in the ham, throw that in there too. A little of Mrs. Mueller's ham-based seasoning. It's really good in this as well. It is the next day, and Joe is removing the bones from the soup. He's going to take the meat off of those and cut it up into smaller pieces to add back to the soup. Oops. That's okay. We'll clean it up. He's using the immersion blender to blend a little bit of the carrots and the potatoes. We're not going to blend it completely. And then he's going to add some split peas to the soup. Now, we didn't have enough split peas to add. We're using up what we have in our pantry, and we're not buying at the store. So we did have to supplement with a few yellow peas. So we put those in there with it. The meat is added back, and you can see to the left there, we left a big bone in there. Put that back in after he peeled the meat off of it. And that's just to give it a little bit of flavor. It's just still pulling flavor from that bone and making this a very delicious meal. Brown sugar and pepper, yes, we want that. We want to sweeten that up a little bit. It always makes for a better pea soup. And look at that. It is very thick, but that's okay. It's good that way. Homemade brown bread, and our granddaughter Riley made some brownies. So it was another delicious meal. For our next night's meal, do you remember the pork chops that we marinated in the smoky peach whiskey sauce? Well, they've been marinating for a couple of days, and we are going to pan fry those, get them all nice and browned up, and they are going to be so sweet and tasty. We're going to have these with some rice. Now this is just some white rice. I washed it really good before putting it in our Instant Pot. And instead of water, I added chicken stock. This just adds more flavor. Joe chopped up carrots and onions, and we're going to add those in with the rice as well. I just love adding add-ins, and Joe does too. Whatever we can think to add in, and most of the time we think of things after we've added these in, we think of more that we should have added in. A little seasoning, whatever seasoning you like to add in. You can add herbs, anything you want to put in there, and it'll make it taste great. We usually use our rice cooker. We have a rice cooker that we absolutely love, but on this night, I thought, our Instant Pot cooks rice. We should try using it because it might cook it in less time. The rice cooker takes about 40 minutes. This did it in a lot less time. So I think from here on out, we will be cooking our rice in our Instant Pot. And the cleanup was so much easier. While the rice cooks, we're going to tend to the pork chops. Look how nice and golden brown they are. They're delicious this way. I like them better pan fried than I do baked in the oven. Now the rice is done, and we did think of one more thing to add. So we had a little bit of pineapple left in the refrigerator from breakfast one morning, and we chopped that up and added it to the rice. We just plated that along with the pork chop, and it was another great dinner. We didn't have any extra vegetables with that. We just called it good with the carrots and the onions. I know it wasn't much, but it was delicious. Let me show you another way Joe and I like to save money, and that's with me being the barber. I cut Joe's hair. No, I'm not great at it, but thankfully his hair is easy to cut. Just use the clippers and we're good to go. And yes, you guessed it, he does my hair as well. This saves tons of money. I almost forgot tonight's meal. The rice from earlier in the week, Joe turned into fried rice. We had some sausage, Italian sausage, in the freezer, pulled those out, added some onions and peppers from the freezer, fried that all up, and it made a great meal. Now, like I said earlier in the video, anything that is left over is going to be freeze-dried. So right now we're removing the beef stew that we freeze-dried earlier. Now that was the first meal, I believe, at the beginning of the week. That is going into Mylar bags. We're going to seal it. It has oxygen absorbers in there, and we're going to put it in our tote with the rest of the meals that we have prepared ahead. This is a great way to save space in your freezer. We have so much in our chest freezer, and it's only so big and it can only hold so much. I like to keep a lot of ingredients in there, so I don't like to pile it up with a lot of prepared foods. This is a great solution. So we're going to put these away and have them for a later date. They will last up to 25 years, but that's not our intention. We'll use these within the next year. I'm going to get those sealed with the help of Joe. I always like to make sure I get those flat when I seal those so that there's no ripples in them where the air can get in. So we seal those nicely. So we're doing the beef stew, and we're also going to be doing the chop suey and the pea soup. We're not going to wash the trays in between. It's all food. We're just going to put it on and be quick about it. Makes no sense to wash it quickly just to get it dirty again, and we're the ones eating it. While placing this on the trays, Joe kept saying, "This smells amazing." He couldn't help himself, so he plated it up a little bit, and he's going to have that for his lunch. Now, I know not everyone can freeze dry foods because not everyone owns a freeze dryer, but I will tell you Harvest Right has a program where you can put them on layaway. It doesn't cost you any extra to do it. They don't charge interest, and you can leave it on layaway for as long as you like. We left ours on layaway for almost 3 years before we had it paid for. Now we're going to load these up, get this started, and wait for it to finish. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I appreciate you very much, and I wish you a good week. And until next time.